Today, I want to share a story so gripping it turns silence into a weapon, set in the unforgiving American frontier, where wooden streets echoed with footsteps and violence often arrived without warning. This was a place where the line between peace and bloodshed was thinner than a trigger pull. It all began with one reckless choice: placing something on the floor that should never have been set down. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. For nearly 2 decades, the man known as Virex had been nothing more than a ghost, buried, forgotten, left behind by time. Long before that silence, from the 1850s through the early 1870s, he had been the most feared gun alive in the American West. 39 men had fallen by his hand. He never flinched. He never missed. Mercy was not a word he understood, but that life had ended 20 years earlier. Now it was October of 1890, in the small frontier town of Redemption, Colorado. Virex, 63 years old, wore gray hair neatly combed, wire-rimmed spectacles perched on his nose, and the steady reputation of a man who handled money with honesty and care. To the townsfolk, he was simply Mr. Virex, the quiet banker who approved loans, balanced ledgers, and took the same pew at church every Sunday. No one spoke of the graves scattered across 5 territories. No one needed to. That man was gone, or so everyone believed, until 4 masked men stormed through the bank doors at high noon. They came in hard and loud, red bandanas over their faces, rifles and pistols raised, youth and arrogance dripping from every step. They had robbed 7 banks across 3 states and had never been stopped. In their minds, they were untouchable. They were wrong. Their leader, Corvain Slade, seized Thaddeus by the collar and slammed him to the floor. "On your knees, old man," he snarled. "Let everyone see what happens when you don't cooperate." The brothers laughed as they cleaned out the safe. Then the laughter turned cruel. For sport, they began flinging dollar bills at Thaddeus's bowed head, showering him with money, while terrified townspeople watched from the street. "Look at the mighty banker now," Huxley Mars sneered, tossing another fistful of bills. "Not so powerful anymore, are you?" But Ivar Knox, the youngest of them, made a single, fatal mistake. He set his pistol on the floor. And in that instant, Virex stopped being a banker. "Now settle in. What comes next will stay with you." Thaddeus Virex had owned Redemption's first bank for 20 years. Every morning at 8 sharp, he unlocked the heavy oak doors, swept the wooden floors, and set his ledgers in place. By 8:30, the town filtered in. Farmers seeking crop loans, merchants depositing receipts, widows withdrawing what their husbands had left behind. He treated each of them with quiet patience, never raising his voice, never rushing a soul. His hands, scarred, weathered, moved with practiced precision as he counted bills and stamped documents. Those scars told stories his mouth never would. They were remnants of 18 violent years, abandoned in 1870. 39 men had faced Thaddeus Virex when he was Pale Hand, the deadliest gun the frontier had ever produced. Texas range wars, California claim disputes, a Kansas blood feud that left 12 men dead in 3 days. He remembered every face, every name, every moment before the trigger broke. Then the day came when his wife died, giving birth to a child that never breathed. Thaddeus walked into the wilderness and buried his guns. When he returned 3 weeks later, Pale Hand was gone. In his place stood a banker determined to build peace atop a violent past. For 20 years, that peace endured. The morning of October 15th, 1890, began like any other. Sunlight painted Redemption's main street in warm amber. Thaddeus opened the bank, swept the floor, and counted the cash reserves. $15,000. Payroll for the silver mine to the north. At 11:30, Marrow Tildane arrived to deposit her egg money. A quarter to noon, young Silen Ward withdrew $5 to buy an engagement ring. Thaddeus smiled and offered his congratulations. Life was orderly, predictable, good. Then the doors exploded inward. 4 men rushed in, rifles raised, bandanas hiding their faces. A shot thundered into the ceiling, raining splinters down. This is a robbery. Thaddeus's hands rested on the cash drawer. His pulse remained steady, his breathing calm. 20 years of peace had buried his instincts. But they were not dead, only sleeping. The riflemen advanced, boots pounding the floor. Outside, townspeople gathered, frozen with fear. Among them stood Sheriff Aldrich Fenn, hand hovering near his holster, wise enough not to escalate a hostage situation. Corvain Slade grabbed Thaddeus by the vest and dragged him forward. "Open the safe." He shoved him toward the iron vault. "And move slow, or I'll put you down right here." Thaddeus complied, hands steady despite the rifle pressed into his back. With peripheral focus sharpened by memory, he assessed the room. 4 attackers, 3 rifles, several pistols. Slade was calm, seasoned. The others were young, nervous, fingers itching. "Combination. Now." Slade barked, slamming his rifle butt against the counter. Thaddeus turned the dial, left to 23, right to 15, left to 7. The vault opened. Stacks of bills, heavy coin bags. Greed flashed in Slade's eyes. "Huxley, Breck, grab it." While Huxley, Marr, and Breck Thorne emptied the safe, Slade kept his rifle trained on Thaddeus. And that was when humiliation turned into destiny. The 4th man, Ivar Knox, held his position by the front door, eyes scanning the street. The crew worked fast and clean. This wasn't their first job. Canvas sacks filled with bills, coins clattered together. The sound of $15,000 being stolen in plain daylight echoed through the bank. Then Corvain Slade decided that theft alone wasn't enough. "Down on your knees, banker," Corvain said, his voice thick with mockery. "Let this town see what their precious Mr. Virex really is. Just another coward." Thaddeus Virex didn't drop fast enough. Corvain grabbed him by the shoulder and slammed him to the wooden floor. Outside, the crowd sucked in a single, horrified breath. Sheriff Aldrich Fenn stepped forward, then froze when Huxley Marr leveled a rifle through the shattered window. "Stay right there, lawman," Huxley warned, "unless you want his brains decorating the wall." Thaddeus knelt on the hard boards, head lowered, gray hair glowing in the afternoon light pouring through the windows. From that position, he saw everything. Every boot, every weapon, every careless stance, every mistake. And there were plenty. Huxley scooped up a fistful of bills and flung them straight at Thaddeus's head. The money drifted down, some catching on his shoulders, others skidding across the floor. "Not so high and mighty now, are you?" Breck Thorne laughed, tossing more bills. "Look at the great banker, begging on his knees like a street rat." Outside, women turned their faces away in shame. Men clenched their fists, powerless. No one realized they were about to witness a legend crawl out of its grave. Ivar Knox was 28 years old. He'd ridden with his brothers for 2 years. 7 banks, 3 stagecoaches, 1 railroad payroll office. He thought that made him seasoned. He thought it made him careful. He was wrong. "Throw more on him." Ivar laughed, stepping away from the door. "Make it rain on the old fool." He grabbed a thick stack of bills with both hands, which meant his pistol had to go somewhere. The rifle stayed slung on his shoulder. The revolver in his holster got in the way, so he did what felt reasonable in the moment. He set the pistol on the floor beside Thaddeus. Just for a second. Just long enough to grab the money. Just long enough to enjoy the humiliation. It was the final mistake of his life. Thaddeus Virex saw the pistol hit the floor, 18 inches from his right hand. His pulse, steady until now, began to climb. Not from fear, from recognition. The old instincts didn't stir. They roared awake after 20 years of silence. It was a Colt single-action army. 6 rounds. Brass cartridges gleaming in the cylinder. Loaded. Ready. Huxley hurled more bills. "How's it feel, old man? All that money you counted, and you don't get to keep a single dollar." Breck laughed along. "Maybe we should make him eat it. Make him chew on it." Corvain chuckled from behind, rifle still trained on the crowd. "This is better than killing him. Let him live with the shame." They watched the money fall, enjoyed the show, every one of them focused on humiliation instead of survival. None of them watched Thaddeus's right hand. It moved with a speed untouched by age. 18 years of killing lived in his muscles. Buried, not gone. His fingers wrapped the grip. His thumb cocked the hammer. His finger found the trigger. Ivar Knox looked down just in time to see Palahan Virex return from the dead. The first shot cracked like thunder. Bang. Ivar's world ended before he could scream. Bang. His body snapped backward, a red bloom opening in the center of his chest. He crashed into a wooden chair, dead before he hit the floor. The bills spilled from his hands and drifted down around his corpse like funeral petals. The change in Thaddeus Virex was instant and horrifying. The quiet banker vanished. In his place stood Palehan Virex, the deadliest gun the West had ever known, holding a pistol with the ease of a man born to violence. Huxley Marsh spun toward him, mouth hanging open. "What the?" The second shot tore through Huxley's throat. Blood sprayed across the counter as he dropped his rifle, clawing at his neck, choking on his own life. He staggered 3 steps before collapsing face first into the scattered cash. 2 shots, 2 seconds, 2 dead men. Breck Thorne was faster than the others. His hand was already moving when Thaddeus pivoted on one knee. Their eyes locked. Breck's, wide with terror. Thaddeus's, cold as winter steel. Breck Thorne's eyes went wide with sudden terror. Thaddeus Virex's gaze was empty, cold as winter steel. Bang. Breck's revolver cleared leather at the exact instant Thaddeus's bullet tore through his heart. Breck's shot went wild, blasting a hole into the ceiling timbers. He swayed on his feet, arms twitching once, then collapsed like a marionette with its strings cut. 3 brothers dead in less than 5 seconds. Corvain Slade, the leader, the seasoned one, the man who should have known better, stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face. His rifle was still trained on the crowd outside, not on the old banker who had just erased his brothers with surgical precision. He tried to turn, tried to bring the barrel around, tried to save himself. Too slow. Thaddeus rose smoothly to his feet, motion fluid, pistol steady in his grip. "You should have killed me quick," he said quietly. His voice was soft, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. "You should have put a bullet in my head the moment you walked through that door." Corvain's rifle was halfway around when Thaddeus spoke again. "Humiliation fades. Death doesn't." Bang. Corvain Slade's head snapped back as the round hit. His body sailed through the bank's front window, glass exploding outward as he hit the street below. He twitched once, then nothing. Outside, the crowd stood motionless, staring at the carnage in stunned silence. 4 men dead in 8 seconds. The first bank of redemption looked like a butcher's room. Blood pooled across the wooden floor, mixing with scattered dollar bills. Smoke hung in the air, thick and bitter, like early morning fog. The smell, copper and burned powder, filled every corner. Thaddeus Virex stood at the center of it all, the borrowed pistol still in his hand, his breathing calm, measured. His white shirt was flecked with blood. His wire-rimmed glasses sat crooked on his nose. His hands didn't shake. Sheriff Aldrich Fenn was the first to move. He stepped carefully through the shattered window, his pistol drawn but angled toward the floor. "Thaddeus?" His voice carried caution, uncertainty. "Thaddeus Virex." Thaddeus looked at him with eyes gone distant, eyes that had seen this kind of violence 39 times before. "Sheriff," he said evenly. "You all right?" "I'm fine." Thaddeus thumbed the cylinder open and ejected the spent shells. Brass casings rang softly as they hit the blood-slick boards. 4 shots fired, 4 men dead. He had always been efficient. Rowan Ketchum entered next, stepping over Corvain Slade's body in the street. He took one look inside and went pale. "Sweet Jesus. Mr. Virex, how—" "They made a mistake," Thaddeus said, setting the empty pistol on the counter. "They got careless. 2 more townspeople crowded the broken windows, faces pressed close to the remaining glass, eyes wide with horror and grim fascination. Marrow Tildane, who had deposited her egg money less than an hour earlier, covered her mouth with trembling hands. Young Silent Ward, newly engaged, looked like he might be sick. Sheriff Fenn holstered his weapon and approached slowly, the way a man approaches something dangerous that might still strike. "I've known you 20 years, Fenn said. "You're a banker, quiet, peaceful." He gestured toward the bodies. "This isn't normal. This is professional." Thaddeus removed his glasses and wiped them on his vest. An ordinary motion amid slaughter. "That's who I used to be," he said. "A long time ago." Fenn swallowed. "Who were you?" Thaddeus put his glasses back on and met the sheriff's eyes. "They called me Paleyhan Virex. I killed 39 men before I quit in 1870. He glanced at the bodies. "These 4 make 43. The crowd gasped. Whispers raced through the street like wildfire. Sheriff Fenn took a half-step back, his hand drifting toward his gun before he caught himself. "You're joking." "I don't joke about killing." The oldest men in the crowd stiffened as memory returned. Faces draining of color. Saloon stories. Campfire legends. Old newspapers from Kansas massacres and Texas blood feuds. Palehand. "Good God," Ulrich Valine whispered. "We've been living next to Palehand Virex for 20 years. Sheriff Fenn's hand stayed near his holster, but he didn't draw. He was smart enough to know that if Thaddeus wanted him dead, he already would be. "The Texas Range War," Fenn said slowly. "Spring of 68. 12 men in 3 days. 14, Thaddeus corrected softly. 2 died a week later. The Sacramento claim dispute, 65. 8 in one night, Thaddeus said. They tried to ambush me. I didn't agree with their plan. The Kansas blood feud, 67, someone said. That was you. Thaddeus Virex nodded once, slow and certain. All of it. For 18 years, I was the man folks hired when they needed someone dead and didn't care what it cost. His voice stayed level, flat. I was fast, I was precise, and I wasn't cheap. He paused. I never broke a contract. Rowan Ketchum finally found his voice, though it trembled. Why stop? Men like you don't just walk away. Thaddeus's expression changed for the first time. His voice softened, just a touch. My wife died. My boy died with her. A fracture opened in the ice. I realized I'd spent 18 years ending lives instead of building one. So I buried my guns, buried the name Virex, and kept what was left. I became a banker. He drew a breath. I wanted to help people plan futures instead of erasing them. You changed your name? Sheriff Aldrich Fenn asked. Not really, Thaddeus said. I just dropped the part that scared people. His gaze moved over the 4 bodies on the floor. But today, these men reminded me who I used to be. They mocked me, threw money at my head like I was dirt. He bent down and picked up a blood-stained dollar bill. They made me kneel. The bill trembled slightly between his fingers. Then he let it fall. They could have taken the money and walked away. But they wanted a show. They wanted to feel big. His eyes lifted, distant and cold. So I reminded them of something the West forgets. The most dangerous men don't announce themselves. They stay quiet until it's time to move. That's why they called me Pale Hand. Not because I talked less, but because my victims never heard me coming. The street remained frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Marrow Tildane stepped forward, her hands shaking. Mr. Virex, you approved my loan last year. You sat with me for an hour, answered every question. You helped me understand the interest. Thaddeus nodded. I remember. You came to my husband's funeral, she said. You brought flowers. You shook my boy's hand and told him to be strong for his mother. Her voice broke. How can you be both men? Thaddeus was silent for a long moment, surrounded by the dead. Because people aren't simple, Mrs. Tildane, he said at last. I've done terrible things. Killed for money, for revenge, for jobs I'd rather forget. He met her eyes, weary and honest. But I've also tried to do better. For 20 years I gave fair loans, treated folks right, helped where I could. I tried to build instead of destroy. His voice dropped. Today, I didn't get both choices. He exhaled slowly. It was live as a banker, or die pretending to be one. I chose to live. I'm not proud of it, he said. But I'm not ashamed. Sometimes the world doesn't let you be the man you want to be. It forces you to be the man you need to be. Sheriff Fenn finally lowered his hand from his holster. So what now? He asked. 4 men are dead. There'll be questions. An inquest. Maybe a trial. There were 30 witnesses, Rowan Ketchum said, gesturing toward the crowd. They saw the bandits storm the bank, saw them force Mr. Virex to his knees, saw them humiliate him. This was self-defense, Rowan said firmly. Plain and clear. Fenn frowned. Self-defense carried out by a man who just admitted he was a professional killer and who's been hiding it for 20 years. That complicates things. Does it? Auric Valine spoke up from the crowd. A man's past belongs to him. What matters is who he's been for us, Auric continued. And for 20 years, Thaddeus Virex has been a good man, fair, honest, helped folks when they were desperate. He shrugged. Ain't we all got things we'd rather bury? Murmurs spread. Heads nodded. Even those who'd looked away during the humiliation now regarded Thaddeus with reluctant respect. Sheriff Fenn let out a long breath. All right, I'm calling it self-defense. He looked straight at Thaddeus. But this changes things. People know now. The stories won't stay buried. I know, Thaddeus said quietly. The weight of those words carried 20 years of silence. The next hour dissolved into controlled chaos. Rowan Ketchum organized the removal of the bodies. Ivar Knox, Huxley Marr, and Breck Thorne were taken out through the rear. Corvain Slade lay in the street. The undertaker, Barrick Ashlow, thin and expressionless, measured each corpse with professional precision, already calculating coffin sizes and costs. The legend had risen, and redemption would never be the same. "Who's paying for the funerals?" Barrick Ashlow asked quietly, turning to Sheriff Aldrich Fenn. "Check their pockets," the sheriff replied. The Slade gang had bounties on them. $3,000 last I heard, someone muttered. "That'll cover the burials, and then some." Thaddeus Virex helped scrub the blood from the bank floor. He worked without pause, mop moving in steady, practiced strokes, as though cleaning violence from wood was no different than balancing ledgers. Bullet scars marked the ceiling and walls. The shattered front window would need replacing. Those were easy fixes. What couldn't be repaired was what the town now knew. Alara Whitmer, the schoolteacher, appeared in the doorway, 32 years old, quietly beautiful. She had been seeing Thaddeus for nearly 6 months. Her face drained as she took in the stained boards. "Thaddeus." He glanced up from the mop. "Alara, you shouldn't be here." "The whole town is talking," she said, stepping carefully around broken glass. "They're saying you're Pale Hand Virex, the gunfighter from the stories, the man who killed all those people." "It's true." She recoiled as if struck. "You never told me." "Would you have believed me?" he asked gently. "Would you have let me court you if you'd known who I was?" "I don't know," she whispered, voice cracking. "I thought I knew you. Quiet, kind Thaddeus. The man who helped my students open their first accounts. Who taught them about saving for the future." Her eyes filled. "The man who kissed me last Thursday and said he was falling in love with me. That is who I am," he said. "The man I became." "But you were also a killer," she said. "How many men?" 43, Thaddeus answered calmly. "As of today." The number came without effort. He had always remembered. Alara folded her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the afternoon heat. "When you kissed me, were those the hands of a killer touching my face?" "They were the hands of a man trying to be better than what he once was," he replied. "Is that enough?" "I don't know," she said honestly. The raw truth in his voice made tears spill over. By nightfall, redemption was split clean in two. Half the town hailed Thaddeus Virex as a hero, a man who defended himself and saved the bank's money. The other half saw a liar who had hidden a violent past for 20 years. At Fenric Lowe's saloon, arguments flared over whiskey and beer. "He killed 4 men in 8 seconds. Dax Hollow barked, slamming his fist on the bar. "That ain't normal." "They were robbing his bank," Fenric shot back. "They humiliated him, made him kneel. Any man would have fought back." "Any man would have fought back scared and sloppy," Dax growled. "Thaddeus fought like a professional killer, because that's what he is." At the church, Reverend Calum Frost gathered the women for an impromptu prayer service. 20 filled the pews, whispering pleas for understanding. "How do we accept this?" Marrow Tildane asked softly. "That our banker, our neighbor, is also a killer?" The Reverend folded his hands. "Perhaps we all carry darkness and light. Perhaps Thaddeus Virex shows us that redemption is possible, even for men with blood on their hands. Or perhaps," Isolde Crane said quietly, "he shows us that killers never truly change. They just hide and wait." At the boarding house, Ilara sat alone in her room, staring at a small photograph Thaddeus had given her the month before. It showed him standing in front of the bank, smiling gently, every inch the respectable businessman. She had kissed that face. Let those hands hold hers, planned a future with that man. Now she wondered if she had been courted by a ghost wearing a decent man's skin. A knock broke the silence. Nera Belmont, her landlady, peeked inside. "Ilara, dear, Sheriff Fenn is downstairs. He wants to speak with you." Ilara descended to the parlor. The sheriff stood awkwardly near the fireplace, hat in hand. "Miss Whitmere," he said, "I need to ask you a few questions about Thaddeus Virex. How well did you know him?" "I thought I knew him very well," Ilara said quietly. "I was wrong." That night, Sheriff Fenn sat alone in his office, surrounded by old wanted posters and yellowed newspapers. Rowan Ketchum had spent the afternoon digging through archived records, and what he'd found was unsettling. "Palehand wasn't just a gunfighter," Rowan said, spreading papers across the desk. "He was the gunfighter. Look at this. Sacramento, 1865. Fenn read aloud. 8 claim jumpers dead in one night. Witnesses say a man walked into their camp and killed them all before they could draw. Fenn scanned the description. Anything on his appearance? Tall, gray-eyed, fast as lightning, Rowan said. The lone survivor said he never saw the man's face clearly. The sheriff leaned back slowly. The legend was real, and it lived in redemption. "I remember the eyes," Rowan Ketchum said quietly. "Cold as winter steel. Thaddeus's eyes." He tapped another clipping. "And here, Texas Range War, spring of 1868. The article told it plain. The Brennan family hired a gun to finish a feud with the McAllister clan. 14 men dead in 3 days. The Brennans walked away winners. Cost them $5,000, Rowan added. 5,000. Sheriff Aldrich Fenn whistled low. That's a fortune. Palehand Virex didn't come cheap, Rowan said. His fee changed with risk. Easy work, 1 or 2 men, no witnesses. About 500. He slid another page forward. Complicated jobs like Texas? 5,000 or more. Fenn did the numbers in his head. 39 men before today. Even averaging 500 a job, that was nearly $20,000. Blood money, Fenn muttered. Sitting in his bank all these years. The thought turned his stomach. Every loan approved, every careful kindness, all paid for by decades of killing. Then he pictured the 4 men in the bank. How Thaddeus had erased them with calm efficiency. The precision, the lack of hesitation, the way a mild banker became a lethal force in a heartbeat. A colder thought followed. Rowan, Fenn said, what if there were more contracts? What if Palehand killed more than 39 before he quit? Rowan looked up, face drained. You think he lied about the count? I think a man who hides his name for 20 years can hide anything. Fenn reached for his gun belt. I'm going to the bank. I need to see his records. If Thaddeus Virex had lived a double life, Fenn needed to know how deep it went. It was nearly midnight when Sheriff Aldrich Fenn arrived at the bank. Thaddeus sat at his desk under lamplight, repairing ledgers by hand. Blood had soaked into a few pages during the shooting. He copied the ruined entries carefully onto clean paper. Working late? Fenn asked from the doorway, hand resting on his holster. Couldn't sleep, Thaddeus said without looking up. Strange, isn't it? I've killed 43 men in my life. But the insomnia only started tonight, as if the first 39 didn't count. Maybe they're catching up all at once. Thaddeus set down his pen. You didn't come for small talk, Sheriff. What do you need? Fenn stepped inside, boots crunching on glass not yet swept away. The truth, all of it. How many men have you really killed? 43, Thaddeus said. Counting today. And before today? 39, every contract. Every killing in self-defense or for pay. 39 souls before the Slade boys made it 43. You expect me to believe you kept count? Fenn pressed. Every single one? Thaddeus finally looked up. His eyes carried a deep, exhausted weight. I remember all of them, he said. Names, faces, the way they looked when they died. He rose and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. Robert Brennan in Texas. I took him through the heart while he drank coffee. Miguel Alvarez in California. Fair draw at noon. The Harrison twins in Kansas. 16 years old, but old enough to point guns at me. He stayed at the glass. I remember because I'm not a monster, Sheriff. I'm a man who did monstrous things. There's a difference, he went on. Monsters don't feel guilt. Monsters don't lie awake seeing faces. Monsters don't spend 20 years trying to build something decent on a foundation of blood. Fenn wanted to hate him, wanted to arrest him and throw away the key. But the raw honesty in Thaddeus's voice stopped him. The town split, Fenn said. Half call you a hero, half call you the devil. Maybe both, Thaddeus said softly. Maybe neither. He turned from the window. What matters is what happens next. Are you here to arrest me? Should I be? Fenn asked. That depends, Thaddeus said, on whether you believe men can change. Sheriff Fenn called a town meeting the next morning. Every soul in redemption packed into the church, pews full, aisles crowded, people standing shoulder to shoulder. The air buzzed with tension and unasked questions. Thaddeus Virex sat alone in the front pew. Alara Whitmere sat 3 rows back, unable to look at him. Auric Valine took the seat directly behind Thaddeus, a quiet sign of support. Fenn stood at the pulpit, eyes sweeping the room. We're here to decide what happens next, he said. 4 men died in that bank yesterday. Thaddeus Virex killed them. The church went silent. The question before us is simple, Fenn continued. Was it murder or self-defense? Self-defense, Fenric Lowe called out, rising to his feet. They were robbing him, Fenric Lowe shouted. They forced him to his knees. They humiliated him. He's a hired killer, Dax Hollow shot back. He's been lying to us for 20 years. How do we know he didn't want them to attack? How do we know this wasn't an excuse to kill again? Uneasy murmurs rolled through the church. Arguments broke out in pockets of the crowd until Sheriff Aldrich Fenn slammed his hand against the pulpit. Order, he barked. We will have order. Silence crept back in. I've reviewed the facts, Fenn continued. 30 witnesses saw the Slade brothers storm the bank. They started the violence. They created the danger. Thaddeus Virex responded with lethal force, he said evenly. Excessive force, Isolde Crane called out. 4 men dead in 8 seconds. That's not self-defense. That's execution. That's survival, Auric Valine said as he rose. His voice carried the weight of long years. I've lived in this territory 60 years. I've watched men die slow because they hesitated. I've seen families destroyed because someone wasn't fast or skilled enough to protect themselves. Those men were killers. 7 banks robbed, guards murdered, half of Colorado terrorized. If Thaddeus hadn't stopped them yesterday, Auric said firmly, they would have killed again tomorrow. But he lied to us? Alara Whitmere said softly, finally finding her voice. For 20 years he lied. did he? Reverend Caleb Frost stood. Or did he simply choose not to share a past he was ashamed of? Is a man required to announce his sins to everyone he meets? The Reverend asked. Are we not allowed to begin again, to become better than what we once were? The church went still. Sheriff Fenn turned to Thaddeus. Do you have anything to say? Thaddeus rose slowly, facing the town. I can't undo my past, he said. I can't bring back the men I killed. I can't erase 20 years of silence. All I can do is tell you the truth now, and ask whether the man I've been for 20 years matters more than the man I was before. The vote would decide his fate. Sheriff Fenn handed out paper ballots. 2 words only: stay or leave. The town voted in silence. Each person wrote, folded their paper, and placed it into the offering plate. Fenn counted while Rowan Ketchum kept tally. Thaddeus sat motionless, hands folded, expression unreadable. He had faced death 39 times before yesterday and survived them all. This was different. This was judgment by neighbors, by people he'd helped, worked with, lived beside. This was the question of whether 20 years of good could outweigh 18 years of blood. Fenn finished counting. 247 votes cast, he announced. 123 for Thaddeus Virex to stay. 124 for him to leave. The church erupted. Shouts, tears, arguments. Thaddeus didn't move. He absorbed the numbers. He had lost by 1 vote. Hold, Sheriff Fenn said sharply. There's 1 ballot not yet counted. He unfolded his own. Stay. Silence fell. 124 to 124, Fenn said. A tie. As Sheriff of Redemption, Colorado, I cast the deciding vote. Thaddeus looked up. Thaddeus Virex stays. But there are conditions. Thaddeus stood. Name them. First, Fenn said, you surrender every firearm you own to my office. You'll remain unarmed for 1 year. Second, you provide a full accounting of your past, every contract, every killing, filed with the territorial government. No more secrets. Third, you'll meet monthly with Reverend Frost for counsel, prayer, or whatever helps you carry what you've done. Fenn paused, his voice softening. And fourth, you keep being the man you've been for 20 years. The fair banker, the good neighbor, the man who helps people build futures. He met Thaddeus's eyes. That man is worth keeping. Thaddeus nodded once. I accept. Alara Whitmere rose from her pew. The church watched as she walked down the aisle and stopped a few feet from him, studying his face like she was seeing it anew. I need time, she said quietly. Time to reconcile who you were with who you are. Can you give me that? Thaddeus answered without hesitation. As much as you need. I've waited 20 years, he said softly, to try to be worthy of love. I can wait longer. 1 month later, Thaddeus Virex stepped into Sheriff Aldrich Fenn's office carrying a narrow wooden box. Inside lay 2 Colt Peacemaker revolvers, carefully oiled, wrapped in clean cloth. My guns, Thaddeus said simply. The ones I buried 20 years ago. He paused. I dug them up after the shooting, cleaned them, and now I'm turning them in, like I promised. Fenn accepted the box and locked it away in his gun safe. How are you managing? He asked. Being unarmed in a territory where most men don't step outside without iron on their hip? It's odd, Thaddeus admitted, taking a seat. For 18 years, I was never without a weapon. Then for 20 more, I convinced myself I'd never need one again. He exhaled. Now I'm unarmed once more. But this time, everyone knows what I can do. That bother you? Yes and no, Thaddeus said. Being anonymous had its comfort, just another banker. Quiet, safe. But there's relief too, he added, in not hiding anymore, in telling the truth, even if some folks don't like it. And Alara? Fenn asked. She's still deciding, Thaddeus replied. We have coffee once a week at the hotel restaurant. She asks about my past. I answer honestly. Last week she asked if I regretted any of the killings, he said softly. I told her I regretted all of them, even the ones I thought were necessary. Fenn pulled out a thick folder. You're counting. I've read it. 39 names, dates, locations, circumstances, Fenn continued. It's thorough. I told you I remembered them all. There are details here no one else could have known, Fenn said. Private moments, last words, things never printed in papers or wanted posters. He closed the folder. This reads like the confession of a man who's lived with ghosts for decades. I have, Thaddeus said. His eyes drifted to the gun safe. Maybe that's right. Maybe carrying those ghosts is my penance. The price for trying to be better than what I was. Fenn studied him. Do you think you succeeded? Thaddeus considered it. For 20 years, I built instead of destroyed, helped instead of harmed, created value instead of taking lives. Then violence found me again, he said, and I became what I once was. He looked up. So did I change? Or did I just delay the inevitable? Fenn answered quietly. Maybe being better isn't about never falling back. Maybe it's about how quickly you choose to climb out. 5 years later, Thaddeus Virex stood at the front window of his bank, watching redemption grow. New buildings lined Main Street, a second general store, a proper restaurant, a telegraph office linking them to Denver and the world beyond. The bank flourished. Thaddeus's reputation, both as Paley Hand Virex and as a fair banker, drew clients from across the territory. Folks trusted him with their money, knowing he would defend it to the last breath if needed. The irony never escaped him. Behind the counter, Alara Whitmere, now Alara Virex, helped a young couple open their first savings account. They had married 2 years earlier in a quiet church ceremony, attended only by Sheriff Aldrich Fenn and Reverend Calum Frost. Their marriage rested on brutal honesty and earned trust. Mr. Virex, Silent Ward, now wearing a deputy's badge, stepped inside. Telegram for you. From Denver. Thaddeus read it once, then again. Associates of the Slade Gang planning retaliation. 3 men headed toward redemption. Advise caution. Territorial Marshal's office. He folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. After 5 years of peace, the past was moving again. Is Sheriff Fenn at his office? Thaddeus asked. Yes, sir, Silent said. Everything all right? It will be. Thaddeus turned. Alara met his eyes and understood at once. She had learned his silences, the slight tightening of his shoulders. She knew that look. How many? She asked quietly. 3. She hesitated. Do you want to run? We could head for California. Start over where no one knows us. Thaddeus thought of the town, the people, the life they'd built. 25 years ago he'd run from violence. 20 years ago he'd hidden from it. 5 years ago it had found him anyway. No, he said firmly. This is our home. If trouble's coming, we face it here. On our terms. Alara nodded. She had known that would be his answer. It was why she had married him. The steel beneath the quiet. The man who protected what he loved, whatever the cost. Then I'll close the bank early, she said. and I'll tell Sheriff Fenn." She met his gaze. "You do what you need to do." Thaddeus Virex stepped into the back office and opened his safe. Tucked deep in the corner, wrapped in oilcloth, rested 2 Colt Peacemaker revolvers, the very guns Sheriff Aldrich Fenn had officially confiscated, then quietly returned 3 years earlier. Palehand Virex was about to ride one last time. They arrived at noon, 3 days later. 3 hard men rode into redemption, faces carved by dust and old hate. They spread along Main Street, hands hovering near their iron, eyes hunting the banker who had killed their friends 5 years before. Thaddeus Virex walked out of the bank alone. He wore his banker's vest, his wire-rimmed glasses. To anyone watching, he looked like a careful man stepping into the sun. Beneath his coat, the twin Colts rested in their familiar holsters. "I'm the man you're looking for," Thaddeus called out. Thaddeus Virex, once known as Palehand Virex. The leader, a scarred rider named Valor Drisk, smiled without warmth. "The Slade boys were our friends," Valor said. "You put them down like dogs." "They died is what they were," Thaddeus replied evenly. "Robbers, cowards, men who thought humiliating an old man would be fun." Valor's smile tightened. "You're older now, slower." "We've been practicing," another rider sneered. "I've been living," Thaddeus said. His hands hung loose at his sides, calm, ready. "I've been loving my wife, running my bank, building something that lasts. While you've been practicing killing, I've been practicing life." He took a measured step forward. "But if you force this, I'll remind you that practice doesn't beat 25 years of survival instinct." The jailhouse door creaked open. Sheriff Aldrich Fenn stepped into the street with a rifle leveled. Silent Ward, now a deputy, covered from the general store. 2 more deputies sealed the side streets. The 3 gunmen were boxed in. Valor glanced around and laughed. "You need a whole town to face 3 men?" "No," Thaddeus said quietly. "I'm trying to be better than who I was. 25 years ago, I'd have killed you the moment you rode in," he went on. "Today, I'm offering you a choice. Leave now and live, or draw and die." The men exchanged looks. Valor's hand twitched toward his gun. "Don't," Thaddeus said. His voice carried the weight of 43 dead men. "Please don't make me add your names to the list." For a long moment, no one moved. Redemption held its breath. From the bank window, Elara Virex watched, heart pounding. Then Valor Drisk exhaled, smiled thinly, and slowly raised his hands away from his weapon. "Maybe another time, old man." "There won't be another time," Thaddeus replied, "because I'm not Palehand anymore. I'm just Thaddeus Virex, banker. And I'd like to stay that way." The 3 men turned their horses and rode out of redemption. Thaddeus went back inside the bank, kissed his wife, and spent the rest of the afternoon approving loans and counting money. Some legends know when to fight. The wisest ones know when not to. That's the story of how bandits tried to humiliate a quiet old man in a bank, never knowing he was once the West's deadliest gun. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Your presence means more than you know. If today's story awakened something inside you, don't let the trail end here. There are many more tales of courage, devotion, and faith waiting to be discovered. Subscribe, comment, share, and come back as we continue this unforgettable journey. Thank you, truly. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. All stories are intended solely for entertainment and may include fictionalized scenarios or dramatization derived from historical contexts. While AI assists in production, Human creators supervise and adjust every piece to maintain sincerity, credibility, and emotional quality. We adhere entirely to platform regulations regarding AI content, ensuring no deepfakes or misleading portrayals. Licensed materials are used responsibly. Republishing, modifying, or extracting content without authorization is not allowed. We appreciate every viewer who respects originality and creative effort.